The Disappearance. Nestled deep within the misty peaks of the Appalachian Mountains was the small town of Hollow Creek, a place where everyone knew each other, and secrets were buried as deep as the roots of the ancient pines. People didn't often come to Hollow Creek unless they had a reason, and those who left rarely spoke of their time there. But when three hikers went missing on the trail, leading up to a jagged peak known as Murder Mountain, the town became the center of a chilling mystery. The locals had a name for the peak, Devil's Spine. Steep, treacherous, and enveloped in folklore, the mountain had always been a place of whispered tales and ominous warnings. Tales of ghosts, disappearances, and murders lingered like fog around the base of the mountain. The most recent story had been of a group of three friends, all young and adventurous, who set out to conquer the summit. They were last seen purchasing supplies at the only general store in town. That was 2 weeks ago, and no one had heard from them since. Sheriff Matt Conroy had been with the Hollow Creek Police for nearly 20 years. He had seen his fair share of missing persons, but something about this case felt different. The hikers, Natalie, Tom, and Eric, had planned their trip carefully. They had gear, maps, and experience. Yet they had vanished without a trace. When Matt found out they had never checked out of the motel or contacted their families, he knew he had to act fast. With search parties scouring the mountain, tensions in Hollow Creek began to rise. As the investigation continued, an unsettling pattern started to emerge. Matt discovered that over the past 50 years, more than a dozen people had gone missing on or near Murder Mountain. Most cases were brushed off as accidents or explained away as people getting lost, but there was no denying it. Something sinister was happening on that mountain, and the sheriff was determined to find out what. The legend. A week into the investigation, the search team found their first clue, a torn, mud-splattered backpack, tangled in the branches of a bush. It belonged to Natalie. Sheriff Conroy felt a chill run down his spine as he inspected the contents. There was a map, a flashlight, a few energy bars, and a journal. When he flipped through the journal, he found something unnerving. Scribbled across one of the last pages were the words, "He's watching us." Matt didn't believe in ghost stories, but he knew that Hollow Creek was steeped in local legends, and Murder Mountain had always been the source of most of them. He decided to visit the town's oldest resident, Eliza Thompson, who had lived there for over 90 years. Her house was on the outskirts of town, filled with relics and photographs that told stories of a bygone era. Eliza's eyes were sharp, even if her hands trembled when she spoke. "There's a reason they call it Murder Mountain," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Years ago, when this town was just starting, there was a man named Samuel Harlan. He was a miner, and he owned that mountain. He found gold there, but greed got the best of him. People started dying, workers, travelers, anyone who got too close. Some say it was Samuel killing them. Others say he hired men to do it. But one night, Samuel disappeared, and nobody ever saw him again. Some say his spirit still haunts the mountain, guarding his treasure, hunting anyone who dares to set foot there." Matt listened intently. He had heard bits of the story before, but the way Eliza told it sent shivers down his spine. "Do you think there's any truth to it?" he asked, trying to mask the unease in his voice. Eliza's eyes glinted in the dim light. "Truth or not, Sheriff, people have been going missing on that mountain for decades. There's something evil up there, and if you don't believe me, you'll find out soon enough." The descent. Despite Eliza's warnings, Matt knew he had to continue his investigation. The search team expanded their efforts, covering more ground, and finally they found something else, a campsite. It was hastily abandoned, with a fire still smoldering and tents half collapsed. Among the scattered belongings was a digital camera. Matt's heart pounded as he scrolled through the images, seeing snapshots of the friends laughing and climbing, their expressions bright and carefree. But as the photos progressed, the mood shifted. The last few images were blurry, taken at night, and one showed a dark, shadowy figure standing at a distance, barely visible in the corner of the frame. Back in town, Matt tried to make sense of the clues. He went over the journal entries, studied the photos, and interviewed anyone who might have seen the hikers. But the more he searched, the more he felt as if he was chasing a ghost. Then, one evening, as he was sitting alone in his office, the phone rang. It was a low, crackling voice on the other end, barely audible over the static. "You shouldn't have gone up there, Sheriff," the voice said. "Some things are better left alone." The line went dead. Matt's pulse quickened. He immediately traced the call, but it led nowhere. It was a burner phone, discarded in a trash can outside a gas station on the edge of town. Someone was trying to warn him or threaten him. Either way, it was clear that whatever was happening on Murder Mountain, someone in Hollow Creek knew more than they were letting on. The truth uncovered. The next morning, Matt gathered a small team of officers and headed up the mountain. They were armed, equipped, and ready for whatever they might find. As they climbed higher, the air grew colder, and a sense of dread settled over them. They searched every cave, every hidden trail, and just as the sun began to set, they stumbled upon a cabin, old and decrepit, hidden behind a wall of trees. Inside, the cabin was dark and smelled of damp earth. There were old, rusted tools scattered about, but what caught Matt's attention was a series of photographs pinned to the wall. They were of the missing hikers, each photo taken from a distance, each one getting closer and closer. Matt's heart raced as he recognized the last photo from the camera, only this time the shadowy figure was in focus. It was a man, his face partially obscured by a hood, but his eyes glinted with a cold, malevolent stare. As they searched the cabin, they found a trapdoor leading to a basement. What they found beneath would haunt them forever. The basement was a makeshift lair with chains, shackles, and a collection of personal items from the hikers who had disappeared over the years. There, in the corner, they found Tom, barely alive, weak and delirious. He had been kept captive for days. When he saw Matt, he broke down, muttering incoherently about the man who watches. Tom was rushed to the hospital, and Matt's team continued their search. They never found the man in the hood, but they did find the remains of Natalie and Eric, buried in shallow graves nearby. The investigation revealed that the man had been living on the mountain for years, stalking hikers, taking them one by one. He was never caught, and the town was left with more questions than answers. In the end, Hollow Creek remained shrouded in mystery. Some believed the man was the ghost of Samuel Harlan, still guarding his mountain, while others thought he was just a drifter who had found a dark purpose. The legend of Murder Mountain grew, and though the search parties stopped, the stories never did. The peak remained, looming over the town, a silent, eternal reminder of the horrors that lay hidden in its shadows. But for Sheriff Matt Conroy, the case was never truly closed. He knew, deep down, that the mountain was still watching, waiting, and that one day it would claim another.